It's all yours.
All right, welcome everybody to the after lunch session. Today's session is about TABE recertification. My contact information is on the slide, but I'm going to repeat it at the end also. This session is designed for folks who have received TABE implementation training sometime in the last 5 years with Minnesota Adult Basic Ed. And it's going to go over all kinds of new information that has come out over the last 5 years. So if you're a new user, you'll have to attend an implementation training. That is a future offering, but this information is all for recertification. So I'd like to welcome everybody. And I'd like to thank Rachel for the lovely introduction, and thank you, Marty, for joining us today. If you're joining us, I'd like you to put your full name in the chat, the agency and program you're currently working with, your current role, and then your work email address. With all implementation and recertification trainings that are done with Minnesota ABE and the Southwest ABE project with assessment training, all of this information is documented, and we need to know who is all attended. And then if in the future, if you wanted to follow up, or your program manager wanted to follow up with staff at their agency that had gotten training, we can verify this information with them also. So thank you for adding that information to the chat. All right, so my name is Linda Keller. My current role in adult basic ed, I've been in adult basic ed for 29 years now. I've been a support staff the entire time I've been in adult ed. Great field to work in, great staff that work across Minnesota. So my role with adult ed is accountability coordinator. I say it's a scary title, but it's a fun job. It's all things to do with SID, and all things to do with data collection, and all things to do with assessments and reporting. So I've been in this role since 2005, been through 4 different data system changes, and I believe 3 different testing series updates, as well as several GED testing updates in my time here. So now you know a little bit about me. I'd like to know a little bit more about who's in today's session. So if you could share like how long you've been in ABE and just different roles that you're embedding in the chat. It just gives us some good feedback of who I'm talking to today and who I'm presenting information to as questions come up. So the objective of today's training is we're going to talk about the updated information that the trainers have learned about TABE 11 and 12, and we're going to talk about some new information that we've learned about 13 and 14. We're going to review best practices in administering tests. We're going to talk about tools that DRC TABE has in order to be used for targeting instruction and encouraging student learning and increasing level gains and MSGs. And then it also will meet your every 5 years test administration recertification requirement. So with all of the materials that I'm presenting, there's links to all of this material that are in the participant folder, and that will also be shared at the end of today's training, because there's a lot of different documents out there. We've got it all assembled in one place for folks so that you don't have to go digging for it on your own. And so one of the big questions that we get is, like, for people that are new to ABE, why do we administer assessments? Well, there's a lot of different reasons. The very basic reason is we need to find out what information a student's skill set is at for basic functioning life skills. There are many of our programs that have placement charts that determine and design curriculum around programming that they do locally. Another reason that we do it is it really helps provide guidance to our instructors as to what it is students' instructional needs are. Part of the reporting process with administering assessments is we're establishing an entry level NRS level or a baseline basically for post-testing students, because our goal is you administer an assessment when a student walks in the door, and then you administer an assessment after they've been attending your programming for a while to determine whether or not the instruction that is being provided is effective. So that's big. I know that in the opening session today, Brad shared information about NRS levels and MSGs and so forth. And so I'll talk about that later on, but it's everyone's responsibility in adult ed programming here in Minnesota to be striving and working towards increasing level gains, MSGs, and so forth. And so that's where the last bullet on the slide comes in, is accountability. We need to be able to provide to our constituents that our programming is effective and it's helping students gain skills from attending classes with us. So who can administer assessments? Any staff here in Minnesota who has gone through a TABE implementation training with a certified trainer, or any staff who has completed certification training, that can be, it's a portal through the TABE site that has the certification process of both parts 1 and parts 2, and then staff who've completed the recertification training. So either any one of these three, as long as you've done one of those three, you can be administering assessments this program year. So, all right. TABE's been around for a while. When I first came into adult ed, I came in the early 90s, and our program was using 7 and 8. For programs that don't know, with Metro North of who we are and what we do, we're in the northern part of the Metro. We serve about 4,000 students annually, and we have 12 different sites that we serve, and we have some corrections locations. We're housed in a workforce center. We have programming at a community college and a technical college too. So a lot of different types of sites, but TABE 1 and 2 was launched in 1967. 3, 4 came about in 1974. 5 and 6 was launched and approved back in 83. 7 and 8 again got approved in the early 90s. 9, 10, I was here when 9, 10 was approved. And then I was here when TABE Online was launched, and in TABE Insight, which is the current version of TABE Online platform, that one got launched in 2017. And then shortly after TABE 1112 was approved. So the platform to deliver online testing got approved and updated like 2017. So now, May and June of this year, we have a new version of TABE. It's 1314. Users of 1112 have not been able to preview any of this information for 1314 yet. It's not approved for use in Minnesota ABE until MDE staff have an opportunity to review and look at the content of that test too. The federal government did approve that test this last summer. It got approved for NRS reporting for 3 years, which means it's approved through June of 2027. And I do have some additional information on that, and I believe it's in one of the next slides, but just keep your eyes peeled for any new information on the tabetest.com site, and any new information that we'll share that we learn as we learn it. So our contact at DRC, her name is here, and her contact information is here also. So what we know about 1314 so far is that it was announced this last summer. DRC, who is Data Recognition Corporation, they're working on putting the new forms into the TABE portal, which is TABE Online and TABE Insight. They've told us that there's no changes to the college and career readiness standards, and there are no changes to the NRS level skill descriptors. We've also been told that there's no changes to the scaled score either, but we've not seen any hard documents stating that is the case. They've given us some small samplings of the blueprint changes where several of the skills either move up or down a level. And one of the better improvements is that if you are delivering paper pencil testing in your agency at any of your sites, there's only going to be one standard answer sheet that's going to serve all test levels, which is a change from 11 and 12. And they've also shared that there's an overall reduction in testing time. We're not sure what that means at this point, but that's what the information that we have been provided with. So who can take a TABE 1112 test? Well, any learners that are enrolling in adult ed programs that are funded by WIOA, clients, any kind of clients who are interested in workforce center specialized training programs or pathways or grants. Individuals who are interested in earning their high school equivalency, their GED, returning to complete diploma credits, learners who may be enrolling into any college courses. Metro North currently uses TABE Online for delivering math testing to our Dev Ed math courses that are delivered at both Anoka Ramsey and Anoka Tech. So we're using it online. And then any learners who, if they're non-native speakers, if they scored higher than a 251 on a CASA STEPS reading test, they can be given a TABE 1112 test, or they can be given a CASAS goals reading test. So, and then there are many folks that are housed in corrections locations, and there's education program placements, so they can also be given a TABE 1112. Excuse me. There's a few other tools that DRC has that they've created for testing, but these tools, I'm just showcasing them, but they're not approved for NRS reporting here in Minnesota. But there's a TABE writing test that can be used with GED prep learners. It was released in February of 2021, but it's never been approved. And it's as of this month, it's not approved for NRS reporting anywhere in the US, but it's a tool that you can use if you want learners to get more practice with writing in your local programs. It's only available with computer-based testing. Metro North has not tried using this with our GED prep learners, but we know it's available through the portal. So there's also a test called Class E. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but the design of it is the intended use is with English language learners. The first version of it was released in 2007. That is the form AB. And those forms are approved still through June of this upcoming year. However, DRC did some updates to Class E. The version of that is called CD, and that test was approved by the federal government for NRS reporting through May of 2027. But just keep in mind, these two test series are not approved for NRS reporting here in Minnesota Adult Basic Ed. So what do we know about TABE assessments? We know that they measure academic skills in the context of common life and work scenarios. We know that you can administer them to a group, or it can be done individually. It's practical for use for either large or small groups or individuals. There are sample test items for test prep with both paper, pencil, and online tests available at no cost on the tabetest.com site. If you're using paper, pencil, and you're using booklets, it's a little more cost effective, but you can deliver online tests too, and there's staff time that's saved. It's with all of our learners in the last several years needing to become more familiar with technology and using technology. It's a staff time saver, and it's affordable. Something to consider is if your program has never created an online testing account, Minnesota ABE purchased in bulk TABE online test administrations, and there are still tests that are available to distribute to Minnesota programs, but something to consider, whether you're purchasing them or you're getting the free versions of them from MDE, is that any online tests, once they are added to your agency account, will expire 1 year after the date they are purchased or the day that they are added. So what I tell folks, if you're considering delivering TABE online, look at the type of testing that you're doing to folks as they're enrolling in programming. If you're doing testing in both reading and math, you would need to look at how often you're post-testing and how many tests you potentially deliver annually before you make a large purchase from TABE to deliver online testing. So here's your one-stop shop for all kinds of information about TABE, but we're gonna move to the next slide. There's a ton of information out there. Here's where you would find your sample practice items. Here's where you will find your objective structure of what content is on every subject and every series of TABE tests. There's test blueprints that give you a breakdown of the content standards and the skills that are on each test level and in each test subject. There's a tool called the online tools training. If you want to use that to help your learners become more familiar with how to take an online test, there's accommodation guidelines and features that are available in the TABE online test out on that site. And then there's a report called a high school equivalency concordance, where it compares TABE scores that were administered through TABE online and predictors for outcomes for GED tests and subject areas. So if you don't remember anything else from today's session, I want you to really take a look at this slide and understand how this works. So TABE's approved, TABE 11, 12 are approved through June of 2025 in 3 different subject areas. So you can use reading, language, or math testing on learners in your program based on how your program structure is, how your enrollment is, what type of instruction you're delivering, and so forth. There's 5 different levels of TABE. There's L, literacy level, E is the easy level, M is medium, the D is the difficult level, and the A is advanced. Each of those tests are designed to cover a grade range, not a grade equivalency. And what I remind folks when they are looking at this information, because TABE was updated approximately every 20 years or every 10 years since 1967, the grade range levels on these tests are the same grade ranges of individuals coming out of the K through 12 system. So as these tests are getting administered to folks that you are working with and the grade range is populated, please remind them to keep in mind their age and when they graduated from high school and how the standards have changed since they've been in high school. And I say that to people because I'm 58 years old. What I learned in school was different than what individuals who are 40 years old learned. They're different than what individuals who are 30 years old learn, and they're slightly different with what 20-year-olds have learned. So that being said, just keep that in mind. So as you're explaining test results to folks, that they don't become discouraged and say, wow, I'm only reading at an 8th grade level. Well, it's an 8th grade level in today's standards. So standardized testing, what does it mean? Standardized testing means that the test is going to always be administered and scored in the same way by everybody that's delivering it at your site, in your agency, and across every program here in Minnesota. Everybody needs to use the proper timing that is allowed for the series it is that they're working with. They need to be reading the script that is provided by the publishers. There are, if they're using paper pencil, you can assist students with a demographic portion of the standardized answer sheet only. Questions shouldn't be reviewed before beginning the session. The practice questions, you should be going over those with students because you need to help them understand how to be either filling in the bubble sheet or advancing if they're taking online testing. So students cannot use cell phones, translators, watches, smartwatches, any of those devices to be helping them with testing, and they shouldn't have access to those types of devices while they're testing. So with allowing breaks, breaks are allowed, but with TABE 1112, both the reading and the math have two different parts. You can allow a break between parts 1 and parts 2, but they should not be, students shouldn't be, or test takers should not be allowed breaks in the middle of a testing session. And then correct test answers should not be reviewed. There's diagnostics that can be populated for individuals if they're interested in how they did it. They can't ask how they did on a specific question, but you can provide them with a diagnostic once it populates for them so they can understand the areas it is that they need to work with. So with the times that are allowed, the slide that we have up, this is the maximum allowable testing times that are allowed for math, parts 1 and 2, reading, parts 1 and 2, the language test itself, and then the locators for each different subject area. When TABE 1112 was first released in 2017 and approved for NRS reporting, these were not the initial times that providers were provided with. And once data started populating into TABE online, and there were lots more test takers, DRC worked with the NRS to reduce the amount of testing times because it wasn't taking individuals as long as what the original testing times that they had submitted. That wasn't what the actual data was showing. And so this slide, which there's a link to it in the resource materials, has the most updated testing times that should be in the test administration manuals that are at your location. So if you don't have this in your test administration manual and your proctors don't know that this exists, please share that with them. The information on this slide was provided to us probably about 2 years ago to the trainers. But even though you can see on this previous slide, the maximum allowable time for reading is 2 50-minute sections. So 100 minutes is allowed for the reading. The average length of time that it is taking folks to complete reading tests is between 75 and 80 minutes. The average length of time, even though they're allowed up to 55 minutes, the average length of time is it's taking folks 35 to 40 minutes to finish a language test. And the same with the math test. They're allowed 65 minutes, but the average length of time that it's taking individuals is 40 to 45 minutes. Keep in mind, this is #1 data from computer-based testing. And then also keep in mind, if you're working with a large English language learner population, the likelihood of them taking the full maximum allowable time is going to increase quite a bit. And we've seen that locally, that they do take the maximum allowable time to take any of those subjects to test. So any questions so far? Okay.
Yeah, nothing in the chat. We're good.
All right.
Oh, wait, well, I guess there's a comment. We do have a comment from Kristen Preston,
Okay.
or Christian. I haven't heard of those diagnostics that can be provided to learners. How can I find and use them? I use paper tests in person. So would that be from running the report in DRC, Linda?
So yeah, the diagnostic reports that I referred to are populated from the online platform. However, they do have a paper pencil version of a diagnostic. I don't know if it's as detailed as the online version, but that's something that I can get back to you and let you know because I haven't had that question come up for several years. The original ones that I had gotten as a sample, like in 2017, didn't provide a really good breakdown, like, and they've improved the quality of the reports and the feedback from the reports quite a bit, but I haven't gotten a new copy of the paper one, so thank you for asking that. Um, if you are a paper pencil testing agency, this just lists out all of the different items that an examiner needs and an examinee needs. So every examiner needs a test direction booklet, they need a TABE test booklet, and they need an answer key if they're hand scoring. Every examinee will need, and I have TABE test books here. Um, you need to take that into consideration if you're testing in more than one subject area during enrollment. The likelihood of an individual testing into the same test level for all or any subject is very unlikely. The only individuals who our agency has seen test into the same level in reading, math, and language have been students that have been very recent drops from high school, so it's not super common. So you may need more than one test booklet per student. You're going to need an answer document for each of those test booklets. And you can either purchase them from DRC or you can use agency created. So you need pencils, you need scratch paper for math, you need a ruler if you're delivering the level E math test, you need protractors for the level M math. Basic four function calculators are available on part 2 of the level M math. Scientific calculators you'll need to have access to those for levels D and A for part 2 on math. So TABE scanning and scoring. Not going to spend a ton of time on this. I know there's several programs use it, but with a 910 version, there was software that agencies needed to purchase whether or not they wanted to get a diagnostic feedback for an entire group of students. Super not cost effective. There was only one program in Minnesota that I was aware of that was using it. The annual fee was really, really high. So in developing 1112, DRC listened. They developed web-based software, so you don't need what was called TestMate. The only requirement is that your program needs to purchase a scanner. These are some samples of scanners and costs. If you wanted to use that, but you would need to purchase the DRC answer sheets in order for your program to get the feedback and then those score sheets corrected. But if you have the DRC answer sheets, if you have a scanner, all that data would be stored, and then it's stored in TABE Online database. So cool feature, nice upgrade. But like I said, not many programs I know that are using that. So many of the questions that we get have to do with the plus and minus on the score guide for test results. There is a link to this document that is on the materials that shows you how to interpret what the symbols and the meanings and the recommendations are based on what is showing up for the scaled score results. So if your scaled score result for a student that you tested as a plus after the scaled score, the meaning of that is a student scored more than one NRS level above the target level. The effect on the student score is it's set to the highest possible scaled score for that test level. And you may want to test the student with a higher level of the TABE test to just better assess their ability level. This is with the pre-test only. So now if you're looking at the minus sign and you have a scaled score that says that means the student scored a level below the target level, and that student score is set to the lowest scaled score for it. You may want to test the student with a level lower to just better assess their ability level. And then in addition to that, the student would likely have to have some extended instruction to be ready to demonstrate a gain on a post-test if you used that test score recorded in SID. There are instances where a test result will either show up in the score guide as a O/R or an N/A where there would be a scaled score. And basically what that means is they scored one NRS level below the target level. But if they don't receive a scaled score, they should be taking a lower level of TABE test if they're just enrolling in your program. And again, all of this applies to pre-testing.
Linda,
Yes,
we have another question from Christian.
yes.
When using a scanner to answer paper pencil answer sheets, is a cost per scan? And it shouldn't be, right?
No,
Yeah,
there's no cost. There should not be any cost. You just have to pay for the answer sheets from DRC in order to
yep.
be able to do that. And something I should share too, if folks are interested in some free materials that are paper pencil, there have been several programs who have not continued using TABE paper pencil, and they have donated them to the trainers, and they are currently being stored at Metro North in my office. So if you're interested, just send me an email and I can get some of those supplies to you for free. So um, those of you that are hand scoring TABE 11, 12, there's a nuance to scoring these tests because very different than any NRS or any standardized testing that that any of us are familiar with. So with the depth of knowledge test type questions and critical thinking being built into questions and all of the CCRs being built into the tests themselves, TABE 11, 12 has two-part questions. That being said, there's also field test questions that DRC built into both the paper pencil testing and the TABE online testing. So the way that the two-part questions work is if a student got the correct answers for both part A and part B, they would get 2 points. If they only got a correct response on either A or B, actually, if they got a correct response on the A but not on B, they would get a 1 point for that question. And if they didn't get correct responses on either of them, or if they incorrectly answered A, they wouldn't get any points for that whatsoever. With the grid across the bottom, as scores are being tallied, the number of correct, anyone who's hand scoring needs to keep in mind that they would be excluding all of the field test questions, even if individuals got them right, as they're tallying up the total amount of that individuals got correct on that test when trying to determine what the scaled score is. So there's a nuance. I know some people are very quick at doing this, but I know that there was a lot of frustration as folks were getting used to doing this locally for our program. So,
Linda, we're at 10 minutes. It's
okay.
1:35.
All right, thank you, Rachel. All right, so in Minnesota, we have a lot of programs that share stuff, which is great. If you don't want to purchase answer sheets from DRC, keep in mind you can't scan these using that scanning device, but if you wanted to have access to free answer sheets, you can find the templates on the MNABE site. Kristen Ugleseth from Northwest Service Co-op shared hers, as did several other staff. So go out and look on the site. So when you're scoring locators, using a locator is the best practice when determining which correct pretest to be administering. And then best practice should be looking at the number correct on each subject. When and if a student scores at less than 6 on a locator in any subject area, it might indicate that a level L test should be used. But just keep in mind, use any previous information on an examinee's performance to determine what the correct pretest should be administered. So quiz on looking at how to administer a locator. Let's do a quick quiz. We'll do 3 questions on this. Sandra got 10 correct on her reading test. Please put in the chat which pretest that you think she should be administered. And just keep in mind, look at the reading column because she took a reading test. She had 10 correct.
Okay. People are saying M.
It
M
is
for
M.
Mary.
Yay. Okay, so Jamal got 6 correct on his math. Which pretest should he have? Can you put it in the chat again? I think this one's M too.
Yes, M.
The only one that got, I'll just give you all the answers. We're going to go to the last one. We have Molly who got 13 on her math test. Which pretest should she have? She should take an A. The point that I want to make here is very rarely does our agency see folks taking level A's unless if they're very recent drops from high school. Very, very, very recent drops. So very rarely. So folks ask, can we use a score that's in the invalid range? Fortunately, there's no scores that fall into the invalid range in any 11-12 tests, but there are results that don't provide a scaled score. So if you see an OR or an NA that didn't provide one, but anything on the level E test, there's a scaled score all the way to the bottom number correct produced. But whenever a scaled score falls into the high or low range on a test, it's always wise to retest. So those of you that are familiar with score guides, this screen shows the low end of the score student, and this is a reading level M test. A student needs to get at least 8 correct in order for it to produce a scaled score, and that's where that negative number comes in. And it increases, and then the negative drops off after they get 11 correct. That 442 can still be recorded in SID, but the NA cannot. And you'll be able to see an 11 versus 12 as students are increasing their skills. The scaled scores do go up based on the amount that they got correct for the post test. So if they got 11 correct on an 11 or 11 correct on the reading M11, they got 442, but on a 12, it went up to 447. And then this just shows the high end of the range when you see it fall with the plus sign. 39 correct, that number, that scaled score doesn't increase whatsoever. It just stays at 575. So a student's not going to make a level gain out of that 575 test. So you just need to keep that in mind as these pretests are happening. If they fall into a plus or a minus on a pretest, it's wise to retest. All right, this screen shows just a really nice visual of all the content that is on each different subject, each different level. If you look in the mathematics case, geometry is spread across all 5 levels of TABE 11-12, as are standards for mathematical practice. If you look in the reading content, key ideas and details, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas, and informational texts are spread across all levels. And then with the language tests, there's conventions of standard English and vocabulary acquisition across, again, all levels. So this screen just shows all of the amounts of passages. There's 47 test items on each test level, but the passages increase based on the difficulty level of each of the tests. And test takers are given about 3 minutes per test question, but all of these questions are aligned with the CCR standards, and they give them a really broad range of topics. So you've got technical, scientific, social studies, and literary text. And yes, you can administer parts 1 and parts 2 at different times, but just keep in mind that you're not going to get a scaled score until they finish part 2 of that reading test, and same with the math test as well. So the scores that are in here are the scores that are built into SID for the valid ranges of all of the tests. The NA is denoted when the levels are higher or lower than any other test that has been given in a specific subject. You don't need to memorize these. I have these taped on the front of my monitor, even working with all the numbers that I do in all the years, still don't have them memorized. But this may be new information for folks that were familiar with grade ranges. There was a grade range document that had been provided 2018, 2019, but DRC took that into consideration with the volume of testing that was given and feedback they got from people in the field. This data is not posted to their site, but it's information showing the average grade ranges for the scaled scores. which should be used in taking into consideration as you're considering whether or not people qualify for specific pathways. So they based it on high school equivalency, performance, Lexiles, quantile normings, and so forth in alignment to the standards. So blueprints, if you're not familiar with them, please look at them for the subjects and series that you're teaching. They're all free out on the site, but they break everything down with standards, standard descriptions, and so forth. And then they tell you what the higher content of the standards that are listed and used on that specific level test. So we talked about profiles and profile reporting and diagnostic reporting. This is a sample. And it's available for online and scanning and scoring too. So apparently that answered the question. If you use DRC answer sheets, Christian, you can get this populated for you too. So
Linda, how you doing? You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Let me see. What do I got left? Let me see. What do I got left? Okay. Okay. This is freebies that are listed out on the Minnesota site that Corinne Hansen from Northwest Service Cooperative provided. And there's ELA and math standard or math diagnostics out there, but they're checklists for summaries for standards. So thinking about when you can post test, they have to have at least 40 hours since their first test in that series and subjects. So just keep that in mind. If you don't know what post test to give them. If they scored in the low to mid range on the pretest, just use the opposite form. These are the prices for all of the tests. If you're interested in purchasing paper tests versus online tests, if you're ordering online tests, just keep in mind how many test subjects you're delivering testing in and look at your annual usage. What do you do if you find old tests? Shred them, put them in confidential recycling. They're not to be used for instructional purposes. And then we all need to be working towards level gains and MSGs because it's everybody's responsibility in ABE to be striving towards meeting our targets. So Brad covered this information this morning about targets. If you want to listen more in depth to that, listen to the recording from this morning because he did a really good job of explaining this material. And then these grids are Marty Olson creation that puts TABE, CASAS goals, and all the standards and NRS levels all together along with the grade ranges. This one shows reading. This one shows math. I have them printed on the wall behind me and they're great. So we don't have time to go over all of these, but there are actually some fun activities to determine when you should be doing and using TABE testing on folks. But if you haven't already done so, sorry for flying through this, make sure you put your full name and first and last name in the chat, the agency that you work with, and your current role and your work email address. Let me know if you need CEUs for today's session. And then because you attended today's training, this is something else that you need to do is you need to make sure that this information is added to your SID history record. If you have admin access, you can do it yourself, but if you don't have admin access, share this information with your data manager to add it. So,
okay, great. So Linda, I added the folder in the chat to share this material. And I also, for everybody that is attending the next session, I added the agenda that you can tap on the Zoom link for the next session that you'd like to attend. Okay.
And if one of you wanted to turn my camera on, was there any more questions that came up? I know I covered that last material rather quickly, but anything else come up?
Yeah, I don't know, like I'm trying to see how to start your camera from here. Let's see here. I have to ask to start video for you. But since we're at time, it's 1:47. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And you know, one thing Christian is asking, he'd like to get an email. So I've been um for about some of the diagnostic stuff, Linda.
Yep.
So
Okay.
on our whatchamacallit,
Tech
the
grid.
the tech grid, I'm like making comments so you know what you need to do.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I
Mm-hmm.
need lists, I need post-its, I need like checklists, and so
Oh
I,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
We're good. Yep. So and then so
Awesome.
but I've stopped. Oh, I thought I stopped it. Oops. Stop the recording. Why am I? Hello? Stop recording. Alt C. Alt C. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes, I do.